Hello and welcome to what is hopefully the first of a series of videos that I want to make to help new players. Final Fantasy is a game that sometimes has a lot going on. For someone who hasn't been playing this for, over 10 years, or maybe even a few months, it might be difficult to follow what's happening. With the announcement of Evercold, a lot of new and returning players are getting into the game. Most of these mechanics have been in the game since A Realm Reborn, so even with the announced changes for the new expansion, we shouldn't be expecting any of these mechanics to be going anywhere anytime soon. So, this is a video for new players, or players that seem to find themselves struggling to breach into some of the later or harder content in the game. This won't be going into in-depth details on how to handle savage level mechanics, but it will be an excellent beginner's guide on how to handle all the things that we see in all levels of content. It will hopefully help you be able to recognize mechanics and how they work faster so that you can die less and feel accomplished when you've successfully navigated your way through a fight. Before we get into any of the mechanics, I do want to mention that one of the number one rules in Final Fantasy is that you should always be casting. Now, this rule does not come before survival. You lose more damage getting hit and dying from a mechanic than you do from disengaging for a moment. But, as I'll cover in future videos, we have tools to deal with that. Once you're comfortable with a fight or confident with what you're looking at, you should always be pressing buttons, even if it's the wrong buttons. Pressing the wrong buttons is always better than pressing no buttons at all. With that being said, first up we have ground AoEs. The short version for ground AoEs is simply to stay out of the orange indicators on the ground. Now, these indicators can take a myriad of shapes and sizes. Normally you'll see lines, circles, and cones, but these can also come up in an infinite number of configurations. You will see these in every level of content, from your very first dungeon to the current highest level content. Although, in higher level content they do show off mechanics, usually in different ways, but we're not getting into that today. So yeah, if it's orange, just don't stand in it, and you're probably good to go. One of the most common mechanics we see are stack markers. These are indicated by a circle above your head with arrows pointing inwards. When these appear, the damage is divided across everybody inside it, so you should stack with the person is on. If you're the one with the stack, generally you should move to an easily reachable spot for other players so they don't have to move too far, especially if they're casters. Final Fantasy does like to use mechanics that may look different but also function the same way as other mechanics. For example, we also have line stacks, which functionally are exactly the same as the circular stack markers, but they'll fire in a straight line and hit everyone that way instead. Now for the opposite of stack markers, we do have the spread markers. These are usually indicated as a purple circle underneath your character, telling you that you need to get away from other players. Now, unlike stack markers, which are almost universally indicated in the same way, spread markers can appear with, let's call them, different elemental affinities. Now generally this is a stylistic choice, and in most content they don't function differently, but in some cases this does indicate that other mechanics are happening alongside them, such as freezing other players who get hit by your spread marker. Next up we have proximity AoEs. Now these deal more damage based on how close you are to the center, so you should always try to get a safe distance away from them. A lot of times you can survive them without having to go to the absolute edge of the arena, but however far you think you need to go is probably safe. These are usually indicated by a small central circle that pulses outwards. And similarly to proximity AoEs, we have what we call flare markers. These will also do more damage based on how close you are, but it is targeted on top of another player rather than somewhere on the ground. This player should usually take that marker as far away as they can from everybody else, while the rest of the players go the other direction. Another mechanic we see at all levels of content are tank busters. These will always either automatically target tanks or the player with the highest aggro. Now, assuming you're a tank, when you see a tank buster, you should pop some of your mitigation so that it doesn't hit you quite as hard, which also means that whatever happens next is easier to survive, and the healer doesn't have to work quite as hard. These will usually be indicated by this red ring around the tanks, but sometimes they do come in other shapes and colors. Basically, these to me mean, caution, stay away from the tank, he's about to get hit really hard. Even though a lot of these are single target and don't do any AoE. But sometimes they do, so be careful. We also have towers, which in all cases at least one player will have to stand in it, otherwise the tower will explode, dealing damage to the entire party, and most of the time it'll also give everyone either a Vuln stack or a damage down stack, which those are always a bad thing. Some tower mechanics will indicate that multiple players need to stand in them, or alternatively, usually in higher level content, the tower may deal too much damage for a single player to soak alone, so in those cases, more than one player will have to stand in them. One mechanic that we do see less often in most content is the look away mechanic. This is usually indicated by an eye either over the boss or over another player. When you see this, as you might be able to guess, it means that you should look away from that unit. Failure to do so usually means that you'll be petrified or otherwise stunned in some way, so you will lose control of your character for a few seconds. One piece of advice, if the eye is over you, you should attempt to position yourself in a way so that the rest of the party can keep facing the boss. It just makes things a little bit easier. Oh, and if you are the one with the eye indicator over you, then you don't have to do anything. You already count as looking away. Next we have move and stop mechanics. Now these usually do come with a countdown, so you'll be able to tell when you have to stop moving, or I guess start running in circles. It will be indicated by usually a play or pause button over your character's head, so you'll know whether you need to stop moving or start moving. In most cases with the pause mechanics, you need to also not be pressing any skills or abilities and be completely still. However, with the play button, you are free to keep pressing your abilities, but you do need to be moving. Just pressing your abilities is not enough. One of the last basic mechanics I'm going to talk about are knockbacks. Now, these are usually indicated by arrows on the ground or occasionally under your character, but that's less frequent. My advice is if you don't know how far a mechanic is going to knock you back, give yourself the most space that you think you need. For example, if the knockback is directly under the boss, put yourself right inside of its hitbox, or if it's on the arena, put yourself near the edge that the knockback is coming from. The one thing that you want to watch out for no matter what's happening is where the knockback is coming from and what direction it's sending you. You can very easily put yourself in a bad place, or maybe even completely falling off the map if you don't pay attention to that. The last simple mechanic I want to talk about are Exaflares. These usually don't appear outside of Extreme and Savage content, but they are simple enough to understand, so I'm going to mention them here. These are indicated by an AoE on the ground with an arrow, which tells you which direction the AoE is going to travel in. These will move continuously across the ground until they've cleared the entire arena, so don't stand in their path. Sometimes there'll be multiple rows, so you'll have to dodge out of one and then move back to the row that you just came from to dodge the second one. The very last mechanic that I want to mention are limit cuts. Now I won't go into great detail about these because every instance of limit cut is different, and we usually only see these in higher level content, but the basic premise is that when you see these numbered markers, the boss is going to do something to the party in the order of the markers. In most cases these do show up from 1 to 8, but sometimes, I think, if I remember correctly, they have shown up from only 1 to 4 before. And one last final honorable mention is the death invulnerability. While this is not technically a mechanic strictly speaking, I am including this because it might save you a lot of deaths, and from healers having to res you over and over. So, if you haven't noticed, when you get rezzed by somebody, you have about 5 seconds where most mechanics will not kill you again. This means that you could even stand in mechanics if you don't have a safe place to go. This gives healers the time to heal you, or, again, lets you ignore mechanics that would kill you right after you just got up. I think that just about covers all of the basic mechanics that I could think of going into this, so if this video was helpful to you, leave a like. If you think I missed anything, go ahead and leave a comment. And if you want more guides on the basics of Final Fantasy, stay tuned and subscribe, because I am planning to make a couple more on how to play all of the individual roles. Due to the upcoming expansion for Evercold, I'm not going to be going into specifics on those with how to play each class, but I'm going to give a lot of tips on how each role functions, and the utility that they provide to the party. And after Evercold comes out, I am going to be going into guides on how to play most of the classes. There's a few that are probably going to remain outside of my reach, mostly because I have no idea how to play those classes now, such as Gunbreaker. So again, like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye!